Okay, we want to make sure we get things going today. We have our regularly scheduled meeting here from 1 to 2. We know you all have a lot going on in your counties, in your coalitions, in your organizations, in your schools, and in your centers and homes, etc. And so we want to hear from you about what successes are looking like lately, what events you have coming up. Just we don't get the opportunity to share amongst each other very often, so want to make sure that as we go through the room, we all know each other, but give us some updates about what's going on with your organization, your coalition, events, etc. And feel free to jump in on each other with questions and connections and things. And then we'll go through some of the other things that have been going on behind the scenes or off to the side with track. And then at 2, Sam Snideman's coming in to talk to us, which he's always got good information. But we also sent him some really specific questions too that we thought might be helpful. So we told him you were all going to be prepared to ask questions too. So, pull a few of those out if you can as well. Okay. I don't care what order we go in. Anybody want to go first? Give us some updates, things to celebrate, things going on in your county or organization.
I'll go first if that's okay. So Rush, well, unless he fusses. So Rush County has one daycare that state is supposed to be coming to next week to see if they become state licensed. So this is something that's been working on for months, obviously. So very excited. Hopefully they pass, or if they don't immediately, it's nothing major, but that's very exciting. And then we have one preschool at Rushville Elementary School working on getting licensed as well, so that hopefully they will be licensed in the fall. And then we've hosted 2 CPR trainings over the past week, and we've had 25 people come to those. So that was like numbers I was not expecting at all. So those are my 3 little wins right now.
We need wins.
Yeah. And let's get everybody as recertified as we can get them on those CPR and first aid things. Any of you who need yours updated, our team's all going to get ours updated before the end of track, because let's leave as credentialed as we can for as long as we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, Erica. Next. Anybody?
I'm Jennifer Lee. I had the pleasure of meeting with several of you regarding the On Track Action Plan this past month, which has been great. I enjoyed the meetings and just learning about what the coalition's goals were going forward. And then I also was invited to attend a career fair coming up in April for one of the high schools here in Randolph County. And so I'm excited about that. They're going to be doing 3 30-minute sessions, and I get to go in and talk to high schoolers about the various careers in early education.
Are those career discovery meetings?
They didn't call it that, but I would say yes.
I bet that's what it is. Okay.
Who's next?
I can go. New flooring is up. Furniture arrives Friday for our new location, and then we just finished the little tiny things that need for setup, and hopefully licensing will come in and say, okay, you're good to go. So that's exciting.
We need to celebrate
Natalie,
your
I'm not sure
like
everybody
official.
knows about your new location. Give us a few details. That's so exciting.
Well, it's not really been made public yet, but our sister church, which is like you skip a block, the second block up north from us, Trinity Church here in Hartford City. Their church sits empty all week, so we asked if we could move infants and toddlers into their spaces, and they lovingly agreed. So they've been wonderful. They've been over there the whole time. People were putting in flooring. We're getting Sonatrol door locks and things this week, so they've been great. So I don't have to go over there and just spend days there. So we're excited. They're excited. They're ready to hear little kids in their church.
Oh, yeah.
So
What will your capacity be over there?
I'm thinking four infants and 5 to 8 toddlers. I have to take it slow because we only have room for 8 2-year-olds up here, so
Right.
can't overcrowd.
Mhm.
So we're getting excited.
That's exciting.
Well, I guess I can go for Wayne County. Pat and I have been looking at how we're going to get our coalition stood back up. I met with Every Child Can Read yesterday, so we're going to do, we do a Wayne County Reads over here every year. The book we're reading this year is Crenshaw, and so we are going to get some of those books and put a little bag together and deliver them to some of our child care providers, kind of as our way in the door to begin to be able to start to meet with some of these people. Pat doesn't know this because I haven't had a chance to talk to her, but I met with Every Child Can Read yesterday on a couple of other things, and we talked about some ways that we can partner with them as we stand our coalition back up in some of the areas where they're meeting people at doctors' offices, and they get a book. When people have 0 to 1 year old, they get 4 books in the first year when they go in for their well checks. So that's kind of a program they already have set up with Neighborhood Health. And I feel like that's an area where we can get to some people with littles that maybe are staying in a child care facility that's not, one that they're getting what they need. So the work continues. We're just trying over here. We're kind of starting from ground zero in some aspects, but Pat had a bunch of stuff from when we had it previously. So we're lucky with that we're able to get some of that stood back up. Our marketing person is working on getting our Facebook page and email back up so that we can start posting some stuff. And then Neighborhood Health actually got funding from Reed to do CPR classes. So I'm going to meet with them to see if there's a way we can get that information out to some of our providers that need certification because they could get it for free. So
I don't know what
I
the
also,
timeline is on that, but Track's also able to do CPR. So if you can back that up and we can cover that for right now, I think that makes a
yep,
lot of sense.
yep. So
Well, I'm going to add the good news in Wayne County. We have Teresa with her world and me with my world, and so the best news systems that I've checked with, they're all doing pre-K introduction, and they're all working really hard to get pre-K classes in all of their buildings across all 5 public schools and the 2 private schools. But the other thing is Head Start in Wayne County has been not very good for the last few years, and Richmond Community Schools took it over. They're now ready to move full force, and it'll be almost 160 kids and families in Head Start and early Head Start. So we're really getting a lot more kids in care, but it really will get them ready for kindergarten. So things are happening over here.
Okay, for celebrations for Delaware County and by 5, we are like this close to releasing our strategic plan. And if you can't see this distance between my fingers, it's because we are really that close. Um, we are really looking forward to goals for our coalition plan. Jennifer Lee was integral in helping us marry together the TPMA, the by 5 strategic plan, and then also the need that has been identified in the community. So we've been participating with Cradle to Careers Pilot Can Coalition. So this coalition will be able to kind of help fill the pace of what they've already determined. And then also, again, marrying those goals together, including the Pilot Can schools. And I just again wanted to thank Jennifer for beautifully helping us weave all of those together. For our upcoming summit that's happening in April, we're up to 112 registrations as of today, which is really exciting. We have a list of about 80 educators that we're working on getting registered. So we're going to we're going to fly very closely to our goal of 300 registrations that we have set. With other, among other summit updates, we have over 20 proposals in for sessions. We're hoping to get to 40. So if you know anyone or you yourself is interested in presenting for the summit, we'd love to talk to you about that. Is there anything else I should be saying about the summit?
When is it?
Get registered. If you have a group or the cost is prohibitive, give us a call. We'll work with you. It's April 25th.
And so far, we have providers that are attending from all over Indiana. I think we have someone this year that's as far away as Michigan City that's coming down. So that's a really exciting celebration to share. We're also still looking for exhibitor booths. So if that is of interest to you or you're available to do that, we would love to have you. We have been working to plan our next quarter trainings, and so those marketing materials will be out soon as far as the upcoming Professional Learning Institute sessions that we will have. So in May, June, and July, we will have Science of Reading sessions with Ivy Tech. Those will happen in Delaware County and also in Madison County. We are working to schedule another teacher boot camp for educators as early as July. And then we also have additional growing brain sessions that are coming up. We'll be hosting an outdoor play or nature-based training in May. And then thanks to the track partnership, we'll also be able to offer a trauma-informed care session with Annie Woodbell, and that will also happen in May. May is an exciting time because we also will be screening the Make a Circle documentary. And we have a panel of early childhood advocates that will be sharing their experiences for advocating for early childhood at that screening. What's really cool, if you are looking to think about screening that in your area, the website has all of the to-do lists. It has marketing materials for you. You can actually individually or personally watch that documentary for free on PBS website right now too. If you're not familiar with the Make a Circle documentary, I feel maybe we talked about this before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating something. But it is a documentary about the advocacy efforts that happened in California and the legislation that they were able to pass. And those stories from educators in all types of processes and settings. That is us. We're making this happen. That is exciting work.
Jerry's dying. Thank you. That was a great update.
Oh, on a side note, I'm also working on pen, and I have a goal of getting it done before Friday. So we'll see if that actually happens. Ashley may or may not have floated some really good information to me recently. And so I was sitting, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but they do donkey ball, donkey basketball. So we attended it at the Jay County High School this past weekend. So I was typing notes in my phone of what I was going to put in my OPED. I felt like it was really inspiring for that. But anyway, the one less put.
Emma, don't you have travel coming up that's like professionally a lot that you should celebrate? Are you going somewhere really fancy? Celebrate it.
So I took a grad class at the University of Louisville. It's a Reggio Emilia study abroad program. So on Monday, I'm going to be flying to Italy. The first leg of the trip is Venice, which I'm really excited about. And then the second part is the study at the Reggio Emilia community. I've been in the past one time, and something I learned last night at my class is that this study group is the first group that they've allowed back in the programs with children in the program. And I was really fortunate in 2018 that I got to experience that with children in the program. I didn't know that that was so special, that it has been so long since that happened again. But as long as everything goes to plan, this will be the first group that gets to go back in the classrooms again.
Good, yeah.
I'm really excited. I get graduate credit hours with it too, you guys. It has helped fill the need of what am I gonna do? So
Congrats.
That's so exciting. We want a full detailed report afterwards.
I am going to do a session at the summit about it. So put that on your calendar for that day.
Love it. Grant County, what you got going up there?
I will go. We held our conference on the 21st, on February 21st. Um, so I think overall it went really well. So we had great presentations by a lot of people, including Liz was our morning keynote, and then Track did a great make and take that was a hit for our providers and our teachers. So thankful to have that there. And so we're also working with a consultant. It's through the IYI East Central Indiana Capacity Building Grant. So we've been working with consultants, I don't know, for the last, I don't know, since early winter, I would suppose. And so we're looking at how to kind of restructure some of our coalition, maintaining that basically the group that we have now, which is very provider focused, but how can we include some work groups that are an easier access point for like our business community or government officials. So then that way there's really intentional ways that we're interacting with them and engaging with them to get them involved in the conversation. So I'm excited about that. We've talked with our local chamber about finding a way to partner in some capacity since they have done some work with early childhood and received the employer-sponsored grant previously. So it's an area of interest for them. So yeah, there's a lot of planning, structuring, and then figuring out timelines to come and what that looks like to roll everything out. And then we're trying to figure out and piecemeal some funding together. Right now it's really in the piecemeal stage of to be able to like hire a coalition leader in the long term. So really we're just trying to figure out how we can make that sustainable before we would bring somebody on board and only have it funded for, a short stretch. So that's our end goal. So it's exciting. A lot of logistics to think through, but we're moving forward. So excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, Ashley's doing a great job and the team. I'm here for the ride. They fill me in and I appreciate them so much. We had a great conference. I was sick, unfortunately. I had to leave. I was so sad to leave. She brought in Sam Snideman and the nice thing about Sam is that at the State House, when we had the early childhood day at the State House, he my staff, some members of my staff came and they came up to me and they were like, "That man is so nice. I don't know who he works for, but he is so nice and just really helpful." And I thought well, that's Sam Snideman. That's a big deal. But the way that it was like just any other person that's trying to care and help out the people who work with children, like remembering that it's kind of remaining that focus of kids first is just he brings that to the table, I think, better than anybody. And so do the leaders that I work around. So I'm just super grateful for that. And we are personally preparing, oh goodness. So INAYC, I'm a East Central chapter secretary. Again, support. I'm here to support. And it's been hard here lately. We're meeting today at 3 to try to get our oh my goodness, that has a whole name. It has a whole name. It's like a survey that says a needs assessment. That's what I was getting. Our needs assessment complete. It's still not complete. I'm sure it's so frustrating. I feel so bad.
The supervisor on the job. This is a stereo.
What was that?
I don't know.
Big Brother was there. Okay, but anyway, I got red flagged. But um but anyway, so we're working on that and trying to be better. So any I guess advice or anything on how to do like smaller chapter events that we can support that INAYC need and then it's like I feel like we should just all come together and then it's just all one thing because right now it's just kind of feeling compartmentalized and I have not been the best person to bring it together but I'm gonna be. So I haven't given up on myself, but just kind of helping everybody come together to have those events. So I have two-part question, not to put all of this on everybody else, but one, um, my first question would be, what kind of events would be needed or helpful to the early childhood field now? Like this post CCDF cut, this post, like what do people need? Almost like what was the last survey of what do people want? And then also how to get that out and outreach more for more members and to show them that it's beneficial, like that incentive part of it too, that camaraderie part that they feel like somebody's listening to them, just like I'm doing right now. But that's all I have.
Liz, I also wanted to say your keynote at the Grant County Conference was amazing. Like, Liz did a session, I think it was called Advocacy is ECE's Little Black Dress. And the message that shined throughout that was so inspiring. I'm trying not to get choked up. It was so inspiring. And you could just see the energy like emanating from everyone. Like it was a really great start to the day. And I hate that you felt bad, but dang girl, like you lit a fire before you left. So thank you so much for that. As for your questions, if that would be an opportunity to partner, like collaborate on things that are happening, like can you, would it be impossible to like do a make a circle screening together or like, do you see what I'm saying, Liz? Like I wonder if there's opportunities that we could, High Five could be a partner to you too. And I'm sure you're not limited just to Delaware County and High Five for that, but maybe joining forces with things that are already happening instead of feeling like you have to create something on your own. Another thing that they used to do in the past for the East Central chapter was like dinners, like, hey, we're gonna meet at this restaurant. Paynes was like kind of central, but our region is huge. So that's another really difficult thing to swing. But that was something in the past. And then also just like virtual like lunch and learn. Like I think even just having like a support call, like kind of idea just to be together. And please, like if we can help you facilitate those things, like Bi-Five wants to be a resource and partner to you.
Well, first of all, thank you for your very kind words. That was very, very nice. I appreciate it. I don't know. I think it's really fun to present and talk through but I like to write them. I don't necessarily like to present them. That part's a little harder for me, but I'm getting through it and I enjoy it. I thank you. Thank you so much. And then I appreciate the partnership too. And those are all great ideas. I have Natalie's on the call too, so she's gonna jump on the 3 o'clock because we're gonna go right to that next. So that is very helpful and really appreciated.
Because what's the obligation? You have to do 2 a year. Is that the obligation?
I should know. I really should. Is it too? Natalie says too. I trust it.
report
It
for
needs to be.
sure.
I don't know if you teach it, but also you get to check off the list. You guys did the Grant County Conference, so
Check.
nailed it. Yeah.
Nailed.
Nailed it.
Good at solving problems.
Awesome. Cian, I see you're on here. We don't get to have Cian with us a lot. Do you want to jump in and give us any kind of update or say hello? Okay. Well, we're glad you're here and listening. We'll take that and we appreciate that. So anybody else that we missed, you'll get all the track updates here in a few minutes.
I just want to celebrate that I've been trying to schedule a meeting since October and I finally got it done today. So it's very small in the world of all the things we're doing, but I was very excited to finally get this one off the list.
Excellent. All right, Lucinda, you want to give us an update on what's going on with RAS 2 that affects almost all of our counties on here?
Trying to get everything fit in so we can get everything.
You're far away. What's happening?
Can you lean in? We can't hear you.
You can't hear me? I'll talk louder. My computer's not been very happy today. I'm ready to throw it out the window.
Please don't.
So the numbers that's on the agenda actually have been updated. I've got 9 completely completed, and that's basically been playground equipment and an appliance. So it's all been in the process of being delivered or has been delivered. So far, I have spent almost $85,000 of the $128,000 that we set aside. Still working on a few more. Some of them are going to be laptops. Some of it's going to be more playground equipment. And I think, oh, and there's one for fencing. So once that is done, I'm hoping to have all of it done by March, the end of March. We'll see if that happens or not. There's been a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls. Any
We are
questions?
grateful for all of your negotiation skills and working with all the reps to get the best value possible.
If you ask, the worst they're going to tell you is no.
Right.
So we thought that going in with RAS 2 for the larger items was going to make her life a lot simpler. That has not panned out to be true. This is much more of a headache for her. Lots more calls, lots more things. We found a new wrinkle in this round of RAS that we've never had. We were looking to buy some equipment for a school district, and because of the amount of money that we were spending, which was over $5,000, per Ball State requirements, it had to be Ball State property and things. So Lucinda had to negotiate with,
I had to
with the
manipulate
auditor
that.
people and make it to where it's not a Ball State asset on the books.
So we had to manipulate that a little bit, and a little white lie here and there to
I
get
don't
it
hear any of that.
to get it through. And now that particular school will own the equipment and Ball State will not.
Anyway, those are just the little things that she's dealing with that Jerry and I super appreciate her for so many things.
I will say too, a lot of you are, really trying to re-engage with providers or getting more involvement with them. Last time we did RAS, we made visits to a lot of the programs, took them certificates, took them a little gift or a thank you or something. If you would like to coordinate with that when we go to anyone in your county, we'd love to encourage people to join us and use that as an opportunity to get to know your providers more or to just promote opportunities for them to get involved, get trainings, get any things like that. So we are not to the point of scheduling those yet, but if that's something you want to do, let us know and we'd be happy to make that more of a coalition effort as well. Okay. Jennifer, you are up next. You've been awful busy this quarter. Tell us what's going on.
Had a great time just meeting with all of the counties and just talking about the on-track action plan. there's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences. But you know, the one major goal is making our communities better for our children and for our child care providers. So that was exciting. And I know I think Jerry was going to pull together some additional similarities between the counties, if I have understood our
Yes,
conversation correctly. But I do have some data I want to share.
that's what I'm looking for.
I cannot share my screen.
Hold on.
I can't help you. It doesn't let me make you a co-host or anything.
Well,
Jerry, can you?
I pushed a button, see if that helped.
Did. Okay. Here we go. So just some basic numbers here regarding the number of providers that have closed and the number of programs that have opened. And these numbers are for our region from July 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. And so you can see, you know, Blackford didn't have anybody closed, but they did have one new program. Delaware County had 8 programs close, but they had 3 new ones. Fayette County had a new program. Grant County lost 2, but gained a new one. Henry County gained 1. Jay County lost a program. Randolph County gained a program, which I was really surprised to hear about. And Rush County had a new program. Wayne County, though, it shows that they lost 7 programs. But an important point to that is that those were all Head Start programs. And it was all due to contractual changes with the grantee. And then Wayne County had 4 new programs. 3 of those 4 were the Head Start programs. So we had 18 programs close in our region and 13 open from July 1st through December 31st. So I think that gives us a kind of a good idea of what's actually happening in our region. I'm going to try to update this list every 2 months to try to stay on top of what's happening. Statewide, the state in this same time period lost 338 programs that closed, but they had 219 open. So there is still a loss gap, but I think that it's encouraging to know that while it is very sad that we had so many programs close, that we're still experiencing new programs opening in our area. I do have a list of those that have closed and those that have opened by name. So if you want that for your county, shoot me an email and I'll send that over to you. Any questions about this?
Jennifer, would you be able to add to that a couple more lines, one that's just a regional overall amount and then a state one as well? Because I think you said you had the numbers for the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that just gives us that local, a little bit bigger and a little bit broader looks. And I always find that helpful.
Because it sounds like, looking at the data here, you said there were over 300 closures in the state last year.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like East Central Indiana proportionally has done a great job of withstanding the storm. And I think that's a good message to share with legislators that, you know, this investment's going to last here. It may not in other places.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I will get those updated and sent over to you. And let me stop share. That's really all that I had to share data-wise today. I am starting to get numbers back for CCDF waitlist numbers broken down by county. They gave me Blackford's, but it is not right. And They say that there are 546 children on the wait list for Blackford County. That is not correct, because when you look at the numbers for other counties, it's way higher than some of the other counties. But I can tell you Grant County has 384 children on their wait list. Jay County has 34. So I'm still waiting. I checked today, and I'm still waiting on Delaware, Fayette, Henry, and the other counties. It's still pending. So hopefully within the next week or so, I'll have those. And as soon as I get them, I'll send out an email.
Thank you for working very diligently on that. I know it has been a headache.
It has been, but slowly but surely, it's happening.
One by one, they're just trickling in.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on that data or for Jennifer about anything?
Just to Jennifer, the other 3 Head Start programs are in the county, and Richmond won't be opening those. So so you don't need to keep pursuing that question, because the 7 were scattered throughout the county, and because Richmond Community Schools took over, they can't open the ones out in the county.
Yes.
You might have to ask them who the County awardees were, because I don't think I got an email saying who all got money. I'll go back and look on my computer.
Sorry, Missy.
We can get you that.
Yes.
I was gonna say, send me an email and I'll get it to you.
Round, I'm sorry. I
He
didn't
wants the
mark it
RAS
down.
stuff, yeah. And we are working internally to work on a news release that will have all of that out publicly.
Okay.
But it should be available in the near future. We're working with Michelle in our office on that. So, but we can get that to you. Lucinda can look at her board and tell you who they are, although she's a logo now, so I don't know what's happening. It's Haley, Hazelwood.
For Delaware County,
Yeah.
Blooming Leaders, Hazelwood, Kaleidoscope, Teddy Bear, and Muncie Y.
I thought you got to all but one.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
Say what again?
Do you need her to give you the list again? No.
No, we're good.
We're good. Okay.
The only one that I have completely done here in Delaware County is the Y. The others are still in the progress.
And the Y's been ordered, not delivered. Is their custom stuff.
Okay, well, as we look down the agenda, I'm going to skip just a little bit to follow up with what Jennifer was talking about here. So okay, screen sharing that one. All right, can you see the color-coded one that I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to cover this?
No. Yeah, go ahead. First of all, I want to say Jennifer gave props to me. No props to me. I've had a lot of things going on in the last week or two and have been MIA quite a bit. And this is much more Ashley's love language as well. So she dove into this and said, all right, you're all using your action plans. You're all using the TPMA plan, which internally we are thrilled to see people interacting with that. It doesn't do any good to have a plan that sits on a shelf or in this case out in the cloud, right? So we love that you all were digging into it. But then what do we do with that? So Ashley, I'll let you kind of explain what your colors mean and what our region is doing with this information.
So we understand that some of you may have just done the plan to get the funds. We get that. But also I think some of this was done with intention, looking forward to the future. With track winding down, Lucinda calls it a death date, all the things not good. So as we're looking at transitioning from the track program into more of an investment into the county coalitions, almost all of our communities have been provided this opportunity. We recognize it was fairly quick turnaround. There's funding things happening from our funders who continue to change the rules consistently throughout time. So anyway, we have spent some time going through the plans. They look great. There's varying levels of detail. Some were rock stars, some were more succinct in what they were saying. So anyway, what I did was I went through the plan. I looked at under each strategy how many tactics they are. So you see the strategy outlined and then each of the tactics. If you look where the colors are, red means nobody wants to touch this. So we don't need to really put a lot of effort into that because nobody else is going to. So where there's red, that's what that is. If it's yellow, it's 3 or fewer communities plan to focus on that together. But where there's green is where there's 4 or more of our communities who are doing a lot, who have identified this as a need. So this is, I think, where there can be synergy, where we can create learning opportunities between each other and kind of identify where track can be supportive in the time that we have left on the things that everyone has identified as a common goal for their community. I was not surprised on the couple that received red. Strategy wise, there were a couple that nobody wants to touch. And I get that because it's the things that are the hardest to control. So, oh, Muncie by 5, this is very cool. Thank you. I was thinking, I worked on this yesterday and I'm like, the colors are very bright, but I think it gets the point across visually in a way that makes sense for my brain. So Jerry, if you want to scroll down, there, it goes through all 15 of the strategies. So yeah, that middle stuff is difficult, I think, for communities to try to solve. So we have a lot of like starting the coalition work. How do we build that work up? And then quality is also a focus, which is sounds like in updates this morning, there's quality conversations already happening in communities, which is great. So we internally, we can share this out, yes. We internally just put this together, but we will look at how we can incorporate what track has remaining fund wise to support these efforts further. Each coalition with their money will be able to do this on their own, but even though track's winding down, the coalition should still continue to meet. I think there's real value in everybody learning from each other. How can we be an asset to INEYC, ECI, however that can be, partner on things. There's only so much capacity that all of us have. And I think the last year has showed that even more than ever before. So how can we partner like with By Five and things like that on things that they're doing to continue the work? Because the conversations of where we were pre-track to where we are now, I think are very different and much more advanced. So I think there's value in keeping the work going. How can track be supporting you now and then support you in the transition more to the counties to where you guys see each other as experts and resources as the work moves forward. So clearly in the green is where I think there will be a lot more synergy. Yellow has some opportunities and red doesn't seem like anybody wants to figure out how to pay people more or use funds for childcare incentives for employers and things because we have no funds to put towards those things. So very realistic plans, I felt like nothing super aspirational that felt unattainable, just aspirational enough to move us forward. So does anybody have any questions? We still have, I think, one more on-track action plan that we're waiting on. That community is going through some transition, so we're trying to be supportive and figure out what that looks like. Otherwise, if you've completed that, Lucinda will be sending out invoices if she has not already in the coming days, and then hopefully we'll get you the funds that get this month so that we can meet our funding requirements from the state. It's super.
Yeah, once I resend out those invoices for everyone to sign, once I receive them, I will get them into the system so we can get those payments out.
And then now that we have like the visual, I will probably put some more work into how to make like a 1-pager highlighting where there's synergy and things like that. So that I think is an evolving document. It was just more of a quick visual on because the plans were due last Friday. So we didn't have a lot of time to turn them around and do anything with them. But be on the lookout. We do plan to keep moving that work forward because we invested a lot in that plan, time and money wise. So I think there's real value. And we'll ask Sam about that. I see he's in the meeting. So we'll just preface him again about how we utilize that resource.
So Ashley, will you be
Yes.
putting who some of those people are so we'll know how to contact the people who are in the same category with us?
So we have an internal one. We were going back and forth on whether it's okay to share which counties are doing what. So perhaps at our next meeting, I think we're hoping to be in person in April. We can kind of say who wants to be a part of this and just have everything ready to go to unveil it or whatever.
Yeah. Wayne County wants to be a part. So there you go. We got it. But the other question I have for you and maybe for everybody else. Has anybody else working with their county's effort to get high school kids internship things going on? And have they had any success connecting those with childcare and or preschool providers?
So
You know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
The
so
state.
the work-based learning requirements, if you're not familiar, graduation is changing for the current freshman cohort and beyond. Many of the pathways to graduate requires work-based learning in an employer setting. There are some communities who are having that conversation. I would say those communities, like Richmond, has a person whose job it is to make those things happen. So she's further along in the process than others. And the state has made it easier to get high school students into these settings. I will also say that, like, per legislation from the federal and dribbling down into the state, and Sam can correct me, early childhood isn't necessarily a career path that schools are looking to send kids into because the earnings are not there when they graduate. So I don't know that the schools are going to lean too heavily into that. But that's just what I've heard ancillary. But there are some schools, I think, looking at creating new pathway. Jerry, is that correct?
I would say that a lot of them who are doing those in-house childcare and in-house preschool are more likely to lean into it because
Yeah.
they have that partner organization right there and they know that their kids are getting some quality experiences. So those of you who have a lot of school participation in early childhood may have a little bit of a leg up.
And I would say Randolph County, with their RAS 32 consortium, Monroe Central has that pathway for them. They are great to learn from. So if anybody's interested in learning how that's worked, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to make that connection. Jerry's obviously very happy to make that connection. But they've created the pipeline. I think they've got 4 classrooms where they've got high school students working in the afternoon. I think it's in the afternoon.
Well, and what I've learned is that like the biomed pathway, they need pediatrics.
Yeah.
And so childcare providers could provide that kind. So that was a conversation I was part of today. So I just wondered if anybody else was there because I don't quite know where to go with it.
I know
And-
that down in the southern part of the region, the Career Center for a while was only doing education pathways, and they have reinstated the early childhood education pathway, which is wonderful. I know too that Jennifer mentioned going to job fairs. Erica and I have presented in Rush County before and are going to again this year with in conjunction with the hospital for health careers. And so we do childcare in there, but we talk about speech and language and pediatric therapies and things because a lot of those kids in those classes know they want a care career, but they don't really know what options there are. And so we bring the babies and they hold the babies, and even the boys by the end are patting their babies and loving on it. And it just opens that doorway up a little more that childcare is one of those care professions as well, and is health related, right? So that they see that as a community infrastructure thing as well, just subtly planting those seeds wherever we can.
And if I put a link in the chat, there's a registered apprenticeship for early childhood. I would say in general, apprenticeships in East Central Indiana are not very far down the road. That's a lot more time commitment than a lot of employers want to put into it, unfortunately. So I would encourage you in your circles of influence, remind and empower your providers to know that they're part of that pipeline solution, that high school students can be a part of the solution. So high school students will have more flexibility moving forward with their schedules. So I mean, they could be helping, like one student help in the morning and then another student help in the afternoon to help with staffing. So just the state's going to try to be creative. So if we can get more partners, I think the more we can get childcare providers to show up and be part of the solution, the more likely we are to get them placed there.
Well, just we have to make sure that we're working with the schools because there's a huge difference in the payback from the state. So if your student is taking a work-based learning opportunity in something that is not a registered pathway with DOE, it's a $3,400 payment if they're in a registered pathway with DOE. If they're doing their work-based learning and it's not a registered pathway, it's a $500 payback. So a lot of our school corporations are going to struggle with that $2,900 gap. So that's why they're
They want
looking
that
at
gap money.
yeah, they need
They
the
need
gap
it.
money. They need the gap money. So that's where these conversations are. How do we flip some of these to get the early childhood piece in as part of one of the pathways that's already recognized? Because I think that it'll be a struggle with DOE to get it on its own pathway. I could be wrong, but I think that's going to be a struggle.
Well, and I know we have, is it Tomorrow's Teachers? I think is what it's called, maybe. And I need to do more research on that side of things. We just like dipped our toe in. We had, right now we have two high school students that do come over, but they are, I mean, we don't necessarily count them in ratio. They're sweet, they're awesome. They do a fantastic job, really. They've been doing like little, one of them is interested in music and has been playing her guitar. Just really cute, fun stuff. But I appreciate all this information because I'm going to be looking more into it too because like I said, we just barely dipped our toe in.
So we're moving into that phase where we're in between. I feel like everything is in between years. So Sam's going to catch us up here in just a minute on what's been going on with the session and the next session. But just want to keep placing those seeds in your minds that as we're in this shifting session of from track going down and providing to the different coalitions, we're trying to do it the other way now. What can we do to support what you have going on rather than you supporting track more? How do we go the other way of track supporting you? And so some of the things that you've seen on your agenda are ways we're trying to invest in the communities through the Safe Sitter to build up pipeline efforts there. Those are still an option. Community organizations, we're looking at how we can maybe use some funding that we have left from the Elevate Learning project to support community organizations. We weren't able to support any of those during the RAS this round. And so we know RAS hit about half of our communities, but there were other organizations that we'd like to support, and we want to do those in conjunction with you because this group will continue through Ashley and through the Talent Collaborative. So what can we do to help support what's already going on in your counties? We had talked about doing a STEAM fair individually as a track thing. That makes more sense for us to bring in to you to an opportunity that you're already doing. So let's say Wayne County is doing a family night or a community event. Could we bring some of those STEAM events there to support your event rather than asking people to come to another event? It's kind of what we did with Grant County with their conference, was bringing things to where providers already were, broadening that a little bit to community members as well, so that we can spread that importance of early childhood and spread the awareness of your coalitions as well. So be thinking about how we can support you on those as we continue to move forward into the spring and then the summer. But as we're coming up on this 2:00 time, we want to make sure we give Sam his time because we have bombarded him with questions, as well as know that he's got all kinds of information that we need as well. So Sam, anything you need from us before we give you the floor?
Nope, I see I have the little green share thing, so that works for me.
It's all yours. We're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, happy to be here. I am going to share some slides. Please let me know if you see a PowerPoint situation. All right, I see some thumbs up. That works. Now, I will preface this with just a note that this was a really, really short session, shorter than normal, right? Like typically my short sessions, I still got like 2 weeks left. And so because of the redistricting work that was done in December, the legislature chose to count those as session days. And so we wrapped things up exceptionally early last Friday. We even wrapped up early in the day, comparatively speaking. It was 7 o'clock, but um, comparatively early on a last day of session when we typically are there until midnight or later. So um, the session itself, just as a sort of editorial comment, I think if you talk to folks who have been in the hallway for a while, who have been doing some of this work, it felt like our friends there tried to pack in just as much actual work in terms of bills being heard, in terms of committees meeting, as they would if they had the additional 2 weeks available to them. So it was not for lack of things to do. At the same time, this is an election year, and people are naturally averse to taking big swings at things. And so that presented different kinds of challenges. But let's talk a little bit about in the early care and learning space, what some of this stuff looked like. So let's start with what passed. 1177 is a bill that does a couple of different things, both of which I think are important and meaningful for providers and for hopefully expanding opportunities for care. It expands the uses of an existing employer child care expenditure tax credit. This current the way the tax credit is currently set up, it's really um, not great policy design. So you have to be a business that employs fewer than 100 people, but also a business that makes enough money that you can afford to run your own child care facility on site. So, um, but then we won't, it was just not, folks weren't using it because the requirements were mismatched in terms of the two principal criteria for judgment. So what the legislature did, what we were supportive of, expands that credit in terms of both the business size, so more employers and employer types can tap into this, but it also allows employers to claim credit for operating expenses or for contracting with third parties to provide services, including things like tuition scholarships or those kinds of things with community-based providers. So now instead of only being focused on capital expenses and buildings and those sorts of things, businesses really can begin to get the tax incentive for other kinds of childcare benefits that they may be working to provide their teams. Now, is this a perfect solution? Of course not. There aren't any perfect solutions in this space. But what this should do is continue to incentivize, good actor employers who are trying to do good by their teams. I know the Indiana Chamber of Commerce and a number of the local chambers across the state are going to be working on, sort of a media campaign, a public relations push to help employers understand and take advantage of this tax credit. The other thing that I will say in this space is if you, as a provider, are providing any sort of childcare benefit for your own teams, you may also qualify to claim this tax credit because you are an employer after all. So, please consult your tax professional. I know it's H&R Block time, but please make sure to do that, as you're looking at things. The other nice thing that this bill does is allows redevelopment commissions to direct TIF dollars toward incentivizing the construction or expansion of child care seats, which is also a great way to help drive some community-based local solutions to this challenge. There is an argument to be made that TIF always should have been able to be used in this way, given that TIF dollars typically can be geared toward educational expenses, but this clarifies that situation for redevelopment commissions. So our hope is that this will also be another tool in the toolbox, so to speak. This bill passed unanimously, and again, we are working really hard to promote this credit over the next year. There were also a couple of bills that dealt with things that we are just sort of bundling under the notion of provider support. There was an HOA, Homeowners Association Matters bill, that included some language that preempts HOAs in their governing documents from adopting policies that prevent folks from operating childcare homes if they happen to live in an HOA. They still have to follow health and safety regulations. They have to, do all the things that you'd have to do for a class one home, but HOAs can no longer, in their governing documents going forward, preclude the operation of childcare homes. There were some conversations during the session and some language that was added into that bill to make it really clear um, that you can't have external investors coming in and buying up properties and turning them into childcare homes within HOAs, right? You have to be a resident in that home, in that neighborhood in order for this to apply. Again, this was a near unanimous passage situation. The other thing that I'll mention, school age care bill 1018. There is a requirement around transportation. Providers have to provide transportation as part of accessing the SAC grant. That was taken out. So hopefully this will make that grant more accessible to smaller providers who don't, provide or have the capacity to provide transportation services. And then I think perhaps the biggest thing that most people want to talk about when they ask about the child care pieces this session is Senate Bill 4. Senate Bill 4 is a various fiscal matters bill. It had lots of different things in it. Community mental health center language. At one point, it had some stuff about public libraries in there. Um, but it does, thanks to a committee amendment on the Senate side, include some language that authorizes the budget agency, which is an executive branch agency that reports to the governor, to seek from the budget committee um, the ability to tap into what is called the Financial Responsibility and Opportunity Growth Funding Pool to help supplement CCDF budgetary needs. In the last budget, there was a $300 million pool of money set aside that was called the Frog Fund. Um, and it was designed to help protect against budget shortfalls in Medicaid, Department of Child Services, or Department of Corrections. Um, and, that is great, but we've also seen over the course of the last year plus declines in enrollment in Medicaid, um, and other kinds of shifts that have freed up money in DOC, and so there is less pressure on that fund, and correspondingly quite a bit of money there to be potentially tapped into. Um, this could serve as something like a band-aid until we get to the next budget cycle, till we get to 2027. Um, the bill ultimately passed both chambers. It was not a controversial thing, including this language. This was well supported, and we worked with members in both parties in both chambers around this language. So, budget agency will have to go to budget committee for this. Their next meeting, budget committee's next meeting is likely in April. Traditionally, budget committee meets in April to hear a revenue projection for the upcoming year. Um, they get a macroeconomic forecast from a national group that will come in and talk about the national forecast and the state economic forecast. And then they will usually get an update about Medicaid spending and whether we need more money for Medicaid. Um, so FSSA has a little bit of work to do and not a whole lot of time in which to do it to determine how much money they're going to try to request from the frog money, how that money will be spent, um, and how quickly they can get it out the door. Whether they wait for a new program year slash fiscal year or whether they try to get some vouchers or some other kinds of support out, in May or June. So In my conversations, and I'll get to this in a little bit, my conversations so far have suggested that there's still ongoing conversations, we'll say, around that. I did see a question in the chat, so I will respond to that. I do believe that the library funding language was taken out of four. I need to go back and look at that one more time. It's not, the library language is not something I followed super closely, but I believe that they took that out and put it someplace else. So um, let me get back to you, my friends at Muncie by Five. Okay, so what didn't pass? There were like 20 bills that were filed this session around early care and learning in various different iterations, covering various different topics. I want to highlight four that I do think have some potential for further conversation as we look ahead to 2027. Um, and as we consider what some potential bigger ideas are for the future of childcare and some of these other things in our state. Obviously, for those of you who are not necessarily aware, most of the money that we get in our state for childcare funding is federal dollars, right? We put in enough to meet a match requirement for the Child Care Development Fund block grant from the federal government. We moved TANF dollars over to help backstop CCDF, right? So most of the money that we use for vouchers comes from a federal source originally that is block granted to us, and then we mix some state money in and package vouchers out that way. There are some conversations that are being had at the state house, and I think in local governments, around how do we add some additional funding sources to that mix so that more parties have a responsibility in this space. And all of these, to a certain extent, speak to one element or more of how we change the funding conversation to center on other kinds of payers beyond just the state, recognizing that the state's not going to take a big step back. It still has these obligations, particularly to low income families. But how do we broaden access and broaden, affordability? It's going to have to come from some other sources too. So, Representative Carrie Hamilton, who's a Democrat from here in Indianapolis, she proposed a version of a child care tax credit that would have provided refundable tax credits against an individual's income for child care and dependent care expenses. I think some members are increasingly seeing the possibility for a path forward for things like tax credits, also moving through tying together child and dependent care. So for, adult children or for parents or those sorts of things too, right? Um, and I think that that's probably not a terrible strategy given the aging population that we have and the many care crises I think that are playing out all at once. Um, we also have a take on something that already exists in statute for K-12 in this scholarship granting organizations tax credit model. So Representative Dave Heine, who's from up in Northeast Indiana, had a bill, House Bill 1149, that would have established an early childhood scholarship tax credit for contributions made to a scholarship granting organization on behalf of a child to attend a qualified child care provider. This would have covered tuition scholarships for kids 0 to 5. It would a qualified provider was broadly construed to be a licensed child care center, a school-based provider, a registered ministry, licensed home, It was very broadly construed, and similar to the way we conceptualize CCDF or On My Way Pre-K, um, perhaps less emphasis on the paths to quality piece in this than in something like On My Way Pre-K. Some of you may be familiar with scholarship granting organization, tax credits, and those sorts of things. Right now, the way SGOs work is the state has the child has the voucher amount for K-12. There's usually a gap between what the state pays for a school choice voucher and what the tuition is at many schools that are voucher accepting. SGOs provide scholarships that fill in that gap, so that there is less of a cost or no cost at all to parents. Um, the idea would not necessarily function in the same way. There would be scholarships that would be made. There would likely be a parental obligation for some level of payment unless you are a really low income family and qualified for CCDF. And then that scholarship may cover, your overpayment or your gaps there. Um, but this was an idea to leverage corporate engagement and high net worth individual engagement to try to create some additional scholarships or vouchers for kids across the state. There was also a bill that I was super interested in because our United Way is thinking about what is called a multiple employer welfare arrangement. We're thinking about doing this for the nonprofits in our network to help them get better rates on things like insurance and other kinds of um, human resources sort of functions. Um, Representative Dan Chesser, who's from down in Jeffersonville along the Ohio River, she had a bill, House Bill 1400, that would have allowed groups of child care facilities to establish MIWAs and to help them address costs to provide things like benefits for employees. So super interesting idea, and I think one that could get some traction because it helps to address both the benefits and compensation challenges that providers face, um, but also does it in a way that may help bring costs down for people at scale. And then finally, House Bill 1430 was a bill that was a referendum on public or on preschool fund levels. So, Representative Blake Johnson from Indianapolis has had this idea the last couple of sessions that would allow counties to place ballot referenda to impose local preschool referendum tax levy. There is at least one county in our state where something like this is happening. The Monroe County schools, where Bloomington is, they've worked their traditional K-12 school um, referendum process to capture some of that property tax levy to provide pre-K services. Um, but there isn't currently a mechanism to allow this to happen on a countywide level, and to sort of work this process for other kinds of provider types. Um, so, if you're a county where the school corporation does not offer pre-K services, or doesn't offer a child care service situation, you don't really have a tool right now where you can seek money to support those kinds of activities unless you start providing those services before you have the money to do it. Um, and so Representative Johnson's language would allow county governments and some certain cities like Indianapolis or other large cities to place ballot referenda before voters, and let them decide um, on those tax levies. So as we
So
think
Sam,
about,
can I ask you a quick question about those before you move on?
sure.
So the way I understand it is sometimes on non-budget years, they will float ideas to try and get some ideas for them with the hope that they'll come back to life next year and be better fleshed out. Is there
Hmm.
hope for that with any of these?
Yeah, I actually think that that's the case with many of these, right? Representative Heine's bill on the SGO piece was something that I think he expected to at least get a hearing, but because of the compressed nature of the session, there just wasn't time to get it through Ways and Means with all the other things that got recommitted. And I know that Representative Johnson has had some ongoing conversations with Chairman Boehning in the House around moving his House Bill 1430 through Representative Boehning's committee. So I do know that there are at least two of these where these continue to be efforts to socialize this session with the goal that next session we may have a fuller conversation in a more public way around them.
So I appreciate the way you put them into bite-sized bits so that if we're writing op-eds or media pieces or having a conversation, we can reference back to these for newly elected or trying to be elected officials, or just to keep the language alive and use it accurately
Mhm.
between now and the next session. So I'm trying to visualize this slide and keep that idea in mind for how we
Yeah,
can move the needle moving forward.
absolutely. And these slides, I'll make sure that you get them, Jerry, and you're welcome to share them. However, use them as they can be useful for folks as they plan ahead.
Hey,
Um,
Sam,
yep,
Teresa Lindsay with the EDC in Wayne County. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there.
So I'm always the naysayer in the room because I'm the economic developer. Ashley and
Sure.
Jerry are laughing, says Liz. But I can tell you from Wayne County, and Pat can attest to this because she is also from Wayne County, there's zero way we're going to get a referendum for anything to do with preschool funding over here. And I don't know how that looks across the state. So I guess I wonder from you in that piece, because I can tell you right now, we had to pass a county wheel tax.
Mhm.
We've had to pass a city F&B. We may have to pass a city wheel tax for next year. So I can guarantee our legislators over here are not going to ask for any kind of referendum that's got for childcare when they've already had to do two, and we're looking at two, maybe three more with the shortfall from SB1 and how that's affecting. So, like, do you hear that more across the state, or is it just us? Because it's the same for us with the TIF. There's no way we're using our TIF dollar. I mean, that's our redevelopment's never going to go for that with all the other infrastructure and other projects that we have. So I just want to know if it's just here, or do you hear that across the state?
I hear it both ways. And
Okay.
like honestly, like my response to that is communities are going to have to decide what kind of community they want to be, right? Um, I hear like I'm sympathetic to the cost and revenue challenges that communities are facing. I don't love, and just philosophically, I'm not a huge fan of increasing tax burdens for people. I'm just not. But the reality is like you can't, as a community, say this is a challenge and then expect someone else to solve it for you. And you can't say, I hear this all the time. Like I pay too much in taxes and I don't get any benefit from that. Sure, I hear you, but I think that like the my friend Michael Hicks at Ball State, as he likes to point out, there's a pretty high cost when you have too low a tax burden too. And that means that you're under investing in your community and you're not a place that people want to live. And I think some communities, even places that are historically, sort of ideologically right-leaning people, are starting to come around on the notion that, like, hey, I can't wait for the state to solve this issue for me. Um, I can't, I don't think we have a lot of poverty in our community, but we still have lots of people that need childcare, right? Like, we need a mix of solutions to afford communities the opportunity to do what their communities value. Um, and that's the message I try to give anytime I'm in a place outside of my service area. Like, yes, in my central Indiana service area, I've got Marion County, Boone, Hamilton, Hendricks, Hamilton, Putnam, and Morgan counties, right? Like I've got counties that would absolutely do a referendum, and I've got counties that absolutely would put me up on a cross before they put a referendum in front of voters, right? Like, and it's everything in between. Certain cities in Hamilton County, I could see it. A county-wide referendum, probably not. A countywide referendum or sort of like footprint specific of Indianapolis referendum, could totally see it. Something happening in Hendricks County, absolutely not, right? And I think our approach generally is let's support the solutions that can work in the places they can work, and let's find other solutions for communities where those need to be different. And yeah, I would say it's a mixed. I would say it's a mixed bag from just my region and the places I go. Some places are very geared up for this conversation to happen at the local level, and some are less so.
I appreciate that. That gave me some talking points.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll say about this too is, um, I like I'm sympathetic to what's happened to communities with SB1, right? Like whether you're talking about a school corporation, you're talking about a city or a town or a county, like it is not great. Um, and there are a lot of hard choices that have to be made right now, and none of them are good, right? All of them are bad. Um, but again, like big sort of transitions create opportunities for you to think differently about what you want. So, um, you know, but it's like the getting there is not going to be easy. Anything else before I jump ahead? Okay. And Teresa, never apologize for being a naysayer. I do that often for a living, right? Like I'm a lobbyist. I'm not a cheerleader, right? I try to get people to do things, but sometimes I got to be real with my own internal team about what's possible. So I get it. So where we're going and what's next, right? Let's talk about the sort of momentum we're getting on some of this stuff, right? I think the last year has really showed us and showed a lot of other people how precarious the childcare situation is for so many in our state, and correspondingly, how much structural weakness there is for employers when they're trying to think about how to make sure they're meeting their own productivity goals and their talent recruitment and retention goals. We tracked about 25 separate bills with provisions related to childcare this session. So it continues to be a major conversation at the State House. Um, we saw a conversation around the short-term need for funding really ratcheted up. Chairman Mishler, who is not generally seen as sympathetic to state investments in childcare, was the author of the amendment that went into Senate Bill 4 around the frog stuff. And so, um, you know, for someone who is deeply and profoundly skeptical of the benefit to the state of making these kinds of investments, and in fact has been something of an obstacle um, to further investment in the past. For him to have responded in this way to, certainly public sentiment in his district and elsewhere is a real testament, I think, to what advocates have been trying to do all across the state. And whether that's in small conversations that they're having with their local delegations or their mayors or their town councilors, all the way up to people putting things in statewide publications and those sorts of media pieces. I think the child care coalitions and advocates are better organized and collaborative than they've ever been, right? I think the last when we go back to like 23 and 24, I think people started to feel some momentum there. And then when things started changing with the wait lists and the cuts, it really reinforced to people how important community and continuity were in creating responses to this stuff. And I'd be lying to people if I said that going around over the course of the last year, um, hasn't been a little bit depressing at times, right? Because the stories are there and they are sad and they are real and 200 plus providers that were in this space, doing good and important work, fulfilling what they believe to be their life's ambition, are not in those are not in this space offering those services to those families. And how many countless families have been impacted by room closures and program closures or teachers leaving the profession, right? Um, so at the same time that this statewide conversation has been a little bit depressing, it's also been really motivating and inspiring because people who are not people who want to be in the advocacy space, who would rather be doing their work as teachers or leading programs or doing community development or any of these other things that they'd rather be doing are engaging and showing up. They're writing, they're emailing, they're calling, they're being in these spaces for each other and for the families that they serve. And so for me, that's really inspiring. So, like I said, things feel better organized and connected than they probably have ever been, but at least as well as they've been in my time working in the hallway. So coming up, I think I mentioned the budget committee will take up the frog issue. We will see that in pretty short order. Like I said, I'm trying to work FSSA to make a decision rather quickly. I realize sometimes quick decisions are can be bad decisions, but in this moment, with so many people and their livelihoods sort of like teetering, you need to make quicker decisions than you probably would like to normally. Um, we need to continue to build on this momentum heading into the state budget year in 2027. And it's going to be a little bit of a challenge in the next couple of months because of people gearing up for primary election season in May. But once the summer hits, you know, reaching out to your electeds, reaching out to the people who are probably your presumptive winners, right? Helping educate them on the issue is super, super important. From our lens, in central Indiana, we're going to see a fair amount of turnover from state senators and state representatives who have already announced that they're leaving. We will probably see some that get beat. That's just the nature of this. And so we're preparing already to start doing some off-season education for folks who are potential new members of the General Assembly, so that they're coming in equipped to be champions for us in their caucuses. Employer engagement is also going to be super important. So we have the tax credit piece in 1177. It's really important that employers take advantage of that, and keep the ball moving um, in that space. But it's also super, super important that the employers that you may work with already, that they are doing their bit to reach out to elected officials and weigh in on behalf of this issue, right? If you're providing them a good service, um, it is not unreasonable to expect that they also weigh in with elected officials on your behalf and on behalf of the families that you serve. Several of these issues, I think, as Jerry asked about, like especially the SGO conversation, will be revived next session. Um, Representative Heine had initially set a tax credit amount total value of $100 million, so $100 million fiscal impact. Um, what he has told me is that he would actually like to see that number be higher in the next when he reintroduces it during the budget session. So I would not at all be surprised to see the governor come forward with some amount of increase in his budget proposal, coupled with something like, 150 or $200 million tax credit pool on the SGO side. And so when you start to think about those numbers in real terms, the governor had requested $360-ish million in his last budget for CCDF and On My Way pre-K, which would have taken care of the wait list at that point in time. You could probably be looking at somewhere in that ballpark or north of that ballpark in terms of proposals next session. So we need to continue to message that this is, the fix for this situation is not to be found in a $2.5 million tax credit somewhere. It is to be found in a more significant and structural investment, whether that comes through tax credits that incentivize employer engagement or whether it comes through direct sort of state dollar investment through subsidies or a mix of those things. The reality is we just need more resources in this pool if we are to make good on the commitments that as a state we have made to Hoosiers and to our employer community. The other thing that I'll mention here is as the new chairman of the Early Learning Advisory Committee, we are going to be engaged in some regulatory reform work. As you may know, the rules for centers and homes are due to expire this year, just as part of the regular renewal cycle. So there is a work group of ELAC members and non-ELAC members who are going to be meeting later this month to look at some initial drafts of what FSSA is bringing forward. So there will be some regulatory reform work happening this year. But we are also going to be working on building consensus on this funding issue and making some recommendations toward the end of the year to the General Assembly and the governor's office on things that they should be thinking about from a funding perspective. One other thing that we're going to be trying to do more of is getting out into the rest of the state, not just doing our meetings here in Indianapolis, but really trying to be where the people are and as the noted thinker Ariel from The Little Mermaid said, ask them my questions and get some answers. So how can we engage, right? So I think advocacy around frog funding is going to be important. I've included OE Castle's email here. I would strongly encourage people who have thoughts around what should be done with the frog funding, whether it's, addressing the reimbursement rate cuts, whether it's vouchers, some combination of the two, to weigh in, right? But also recognize budget committee is going to meet in April. And so you probably want to make some of probably want to weigh in sooner rather than later. The budget committee meeting date hasn't been set yet. It typically isn't until after tax filing season, so it's probably at least a month and a half away. So you're looking at the back half of April, probably. I know I got a question from Jerry in the email around this, around the Hoosier Milestones, Legislators, and Little Learners events. I heard lots of really good things from the legislators who attended those events. So I do think from the perspective of the folks, Republicans and Democrats, who were able to get to some of these places, they were really positive. Getting some folks into some of these places, getting some of our legislative friends to take us up on the invites was more of a challenge, right? Quite frankly. As you all know, some of them are just not that interested in coming to a child care facility and having a conversation about childcare. So, but we are going to do another round of these this summer. So keep an eye out for emails about your interest in maybe hosting a visit like this. Um, so we are going to re-engage with other legislators and maybe even some folks who are candidates and who are thinking about it. I also want to encourage people to attend or stream FSSA's quarterly financial reviews. The next one of those is April 28th in the Government Center. OE Castle usually presents fairly early, and the agenda, it's usually around 10 a.m. Um, so they provide the short-term funding picture there. They also will respond to questions that are submitted. Um, so, being there or streaming and weighing in, super important. If the frog funding piece isn't on the April agenda for Budget Committee, this is again another way to weigh in with FSSA ahead of time. And even if the decisions have been made, this is a good place to come and weigh in on implementation and how those things are carried out. So that is all that I've got for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions with the time that is left.
Thank you, Sam. I have a question. So, with track, we've done a pretty good job of watching ELAC and the OE Castle meetings. The last financial update, it looked like there would be a substantial shortfall going into the next year of this budget. So my assumption is that's what the Frog Fund is essentially going to do, is another round of hold harmless. Is that what you're hearing? No?
No, I'm not hearing that it's going to be hold harmless. The conversations that I've had so far have centered on really one of two things, right? Is there a potential to turn on the vouchers at least for certain groups, right? Like kids in foster care, infants, like, pick a group, right? And be able to create some new vouchers. That's one. The other is this a chance to address the reimbursement rate issue that has hit so many providers so hard and so quickly? So I have not specifically heard, like we're going to do another round of hold harmless. I have heard that we're looking at potentially addressing some of the wait list or addressing reimbursement rates.
Well, just like the last OE Castle update, it showed for state fiscal year 27, almost 200 million less than the current year. So that's where I have not heard the hold harmless. That's just me inferring from the data that was presented.
Yeah, and there's a good chance that we'll see some TANF dollars that get moved over, um, or money that could be used in the 5 to 10% holdbacks that the
Okay.
state has obligated agencies to take.
Yeah, most states aware of those.
Yeah, right. So there are other ways to plug those kinds of shortfalls.
Okay.
I cannot imagine that. I cannot imagine how upset the legislature would be if the frog money turned into filling in an existing structural deficit.
Okay, great. That's great news. Add that to our good news, everyone, from the beginning.
Sam, was it ELAC that said something about an infant toddler pilot program? I forget what they called it, but might that tie into this frog funding or opening vouchers to infants and toddlers?
It could. There are the agencies. The OE Castle's involved in a number of different pilot programs, some of which they're using the PDG dollars to support. Um, I know from conversations with legislators in this most recent session that the two big things that people were sort of flummoxed by were the impact that the wait list and the cuts have had on foster families and the ability of DCS to make placements, um, and the fact that the agency is already saying it'll be the end of 2027 before we give one new infant a voucher, right? And for a group of people that is in our legislature that is increasingly worried about um, family formation and sort of like the creation and growth of families in the state. Both of those things are horrifying to hear. And so, this is not to say they always create policy that aligns with those worries, but it is to say that a big part of the conversation that I had with people around why we need these kinds of investments does come back to the ability of people to start families and to grow families, whether that's through adoption or foster families or through their own sort of family formation. And when you are telling um, foster families, particularly foster families who have been foster families for a long time, that you don't have the supports they need in order to take placements, um, those folks let their legislators know, and that has been a sticking point on this. So like I said, I think that there's a good chance that they'll look at um, certain priority groups within that list of priority groups and say, we've got to do, we've got to make some movement on some of these to get out the wait list question.
Sam, Pat Heine here over in Richmond. I have a kind of a feeling question. You've given us lots of facts, but when I hear from providers and preschool teachers, they almost could care less about that. What can I say in 2 or 3 sentences that Sam Snideman said that gave him hope from this session?
Yeah. I think that two big things. One, the thing that I mentioned earlier on the slide, that the advocates and the coalitions are better organized and more committed than they've ever been, right? That gives me a lot of hope because that means that people are listening. That means that they are banding together. That means they're not giving up, right? And that gives me a lot of hope. The second thing is that people who are not traditionally interested in solutions to these problems are the ones who are driving solutions to the problems, right? So Ryan Mishler putting that frog language into Senate Bill 4, Dave Heine, who when I first started working at United Way and started working on these issues, couldn't have cared less. But now I caught him after a Ways and Means Committee hearing, and he said, I can't believe that we even have to have a conversation about this. Like, this is just so, you know, so clear to me that this is a place we need to be investing more in, right? So people who are and Representative Heine and Senator Mishler are not people with like young kids at home either, right? So this is not something that they are dealing with in their everyday life. But they are starting to see and hear from those well-organized people in their districts, um, from those employers in their districts. They are hearing that this is an issue and they are working to solve it. And those two things are probably the biggest things that give me optimism as we head in. I think the last thing is, even though we didn't get a lot of real policy answers from the governor this session on this issue. He did include a mention of childcare in his State of the State address, right? He pointed forward and said, "We're going to spend some time over this next year looking at how we, help address affordability in childcare, and I want to make sure that businesses are involved in doing their bit." So I do think that like governor is aligned with one particular vision. You've got a legislature that maybe they're not 100% on board with each other, but they are rowing in a similar direction. And you've got coalitions and advocates who are out there saying we we know what we can do here. We know what our families need, and we're holding the line to make sure that they get it. Anything else?
You
Yeah.
just wrote my speech. Thank you.
Sam, this is Ashley from Grant County. For 1177, is there anything that you know of that exists out there that's kind of like a quick breakdown of what that looks like for the employer tax credit?
So I think that the Indiana Chamber is working on something. I'm happy to share that as they develop it. But I do know in talking with my counterpart at the state chamber that this is something they're working on.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yep.
I do have a question. Just in the step with the track program. So for with all our coalitions and stuff, would you have any suggestions on maybe inviting other people to the coalition to make the coalition stronger that could help? I mean, suggestions or anything like that?
Yeah. So I think that you've got to look at your anchor institutions in every county and every community, right? Like, who are your big employers? Bring them in. Um, who are your tentpole sort of like philanthropic partners too? Muncie and Delaware County in particular are really blessed in this regard, right? Like with Ball Brothers and all the different foundations that exist there. But I realize every county doesn't have that, right? Getting those community foundations, getting those private philanthropies into the conversation and leveraging their relationships and networks are hugely important if they're not already at the table. Um, I think having your school superintendents that I heard when I jumped on the call, someone talking about the importance of working with your local schools, having your school superintendents bought in is a big thing. But also, like, we live in an era of school choice. We are a school choice state. Having this SGO conversation, I will tell you, in conversations that I've had with advocates who represent like the private and parochial schools, the Catholic Conference, some of those entities, they're very interested in that as a model too, right? Because they see that benefit and they have a lot of insight into how those things work. So inviting, to the extent that you feel comfortable, inviting those folks into the conversation and making them your allies, at least on these questions of funding where you have similar goals, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And get your RDCs involved now that they can maybe possibly direct some crumbs of TIF dollars your way.
I'm gonna write that down. Teresa's gonna laugh, so she won't.
No, I know that. I exclusively said that for
Teresa.
For
yeah,
my benefit, thanks, Sam. I've already had that conversation with my RDC chair that's in my office at least twice a week, and I can guarantee you that's a negatory in this part of the state.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I
I'm getting
got
ready to.
I got a sewer infrastructure project. I got a library project.
Well, maybe I'm driving your way after this call on my way to Columbus. Maybe I'll stop and try to help advance your tax base a little bit. Do what I can.
They did just pass food and beverage, so yeah, stop and eat
Yeah,
something somewhere.
I'll stop at the Uranus Fudge Factory there on off of 70.
So for those who don't know, Sam was instrumental in our TPMA plan getting to be released, as that was a whole conversation. So thank you for that, Sam. We put a lot of time, energy, effort into all of that. How can we use what's in there to move this work forward? What's
Um,
going to resonate from those things with the people who need to know?
yeah, I think if you haven't done so already, sending a digital copy of that to all of the elected state legislators and their staffs in your region is hugely important, right? Like the legislator may only read that executive summary, but the staff is going to look at it more closely. And increasingly, we have legislative assistants who are seeing as a big part of their job doing policy research to help their bosses expand their ability to do meaningful policy work. So getting it to the staff, very, very important, very critical. We're doing that with our own reports and our own things in that space. The other thing that I would say is use that report as the basis for writing and doing media engagement, right? I like to reference back to, we have our United for Alice report that we do every year.
I reference that all the time.
Yeah, I look at when I do op-eds or things like that, I almost always want to connect something back to that United for Alice report, right? I want to be able to like continue to get some mileage out of that investment that we make. If I'm going on the news, I want to talk about our United for Alice report. If I'm doing, a print interview, I want to talk about something from our United for Alice report. Getting your members who are doing pieces in media or who are just doing things in town halls or other meetings, getting them to use a fact or a thing to redirect you back to that report, right? Um, Hugely, hugely helpful, and that expands the reach and the life of that plan.
So, Sam, knowing that track is in a position at Ball State, I would assume, encourage us to lean into our community partners to share that
That's
with
correct.
legislative
Yes.
people. Okay, I
Yes.
just wanted to make that clear for my team.
Yes. Yeah. Your ability is constrained, obviously, by the institutional prerogatives. But your community partners who are doing some of this related work absolutely leverage those resources and link them back liberally.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sam, Sam, as always, you give us good information, more questions for us to keep thinking about, which I appreciate because that keeps us moving towards next steps as well.
Awesome.
So thank you. Unless anybody else has any other questions, then we appreciate you. And we really appreciate now that we found out that you came in on your day off. So
stop doing that.
Go back to enjoying your day off. You did not need to do that, but we're grateful.
I'm on my way to Columbus, Ohio next for a soccer game. So Teresa, like I said, I'll try to make sure to make a stop there in Wayne County.
Well,
I wondered how you were going to pass her on the way to Columbus, Indiana.
Yeah.
I was like, my geography doesn't work that way, but maybe yours does.
Big U loop. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you. Anybody else have any final thoughts, questions before we head out for the day?
Thank you for all the information.
Yeah.
Jerry, I'll send you the slides before I take off.
Okay. I will send them all out to the rest of you in the next couple of days or so then. Or probably Lucinda will, let's be honest. But good seeing everybody.
Yes.
Thanks,
thank you all.
everybody.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.